First of all, many thanks for Jeff Williams inviting me to this fantastic event. It was 2006 when I was here last time. Jeff had made a fantastic arrangement last time and this time too. Not just the conference, but the weather has been so perfect that unfortunately I have not been able to enjoy it very much apart from walking around on campus. I hope to be able to enjoy this weather, a beautiful Vancouver, somehow which reminds me of Sydney later on after my talk has been done. As the title of my talk, Illuminating Grammar, Language Comparison, should suggest, what I would like to do in my talk to explore grammar, or more precisely, lexicogrammar, lexis, and grammar with semantics systemic functionally in the context of multilingual studies. In the title of my talk, the word illuminating in the nominal group is intended to serve two purposes. One is an adjective specifying the quality of the head noun grammar as an epithet, or nominalization of the process for which the grammar serves as a range. In those two grammatical environments, that is, in the making meaning process of nominal group, both the quality and process emerge out of the realization relationship between systemic functional theory and in context and description of language that deploys its systemic theoretical dimensions. By saying that, I'm pointing the importance of such semiotic relationship between theory and description. And also, illuminating also suggests that one challenge when one tries to give a talk on different languages is to manage the complexity without having to compromise too much, so that in order to make illuminating here also suggests making grammar accessible and somehow, fun to explore. Systemic functional multilingual studies has been attracting more and more attention in recent years for not only English, but also a growing number of other languages has been described systemically functionally culminating in a huge expansion of multilingual resources, which in turn has enriched its multilingual capabilities. In other words, what we can do with multilingual resources. What is projected here, a snapshot of development of lexicogrammatical description of languages other than English, which is drawn based on Christian Madsen's summary published in 2007. Here I reorganized the summary along the timelines starting from 1980s, showing only those which deal with clause and or clause complexes. Note here that this is not intended to be comprehensive or an up-to-date summary. There must be other languages which are currently being described systemically functionally but not listed here. So if you know those languages, please let me know later on. So this is the 1980s. Tagalog, Jim Martin, Telugu, percussion, Chinese, and Japanese Bateman in the context of computational linguistics. In 90s, there are more languages that had been described. So I color coordinated. So in 90s, I draw attention to two important work by Jim Martin on Tagalog and Rukai Hassan Urdu, in which syndrome features are contrasted, and this is a very labor-intensive work and very important work, but there are no other language studies of this kind currently in systemic functional context. And in 2000, there are more languages described. Japanese, David Thompson, Danish, Fijan Dijara, David Rose, French, Alice Caffarello, Spanish, Jorge Hita Aruz, and Chinese, Halliday, and also landmark of this development is the book published, Language Typology, Functional Perspective, edited by Alice Caffarel, Jim Martin, Christian Matheson, published in 2004, in which you find a chapter by Christian Matheson, which is generalized these contributions that have been made by scholars working on different languages. And this is a must read book chapter if you're interested in multilingual context. And also in which there are German, Telugu, Vietnamese, and also my chapter is there too. And there is another new, just published with Spanish, on Spanish, Jorge Hitaruz at the present in the conference. Among those, I would like to draw attention to those two important contributions, Bajika by Abhishek Kumar, and also Oko, Nigerian language, Ernest Akerajola. These are the first description of these languages that have appeared. So they had to work. There is an oral tradition, there is no written language, so they had to develop corpus first, and they have spent many years to developing this description. Very important contribution that had been made by those two. Now, so description is very important, but what is as equally important as general profiling of languages, and perhaps more challenging and rewarding, is to realize Marian's dream, like Ricardo Hassan demonstrated in 1987. It would require huge investment of labor to follow what Hassan has proved to be feasible to identify a continuum between grammar and lexis. By taking the grammar of acquisition as an example, it will be crucial to push language description towards further delicacy to enrich language resources. So what is grammar then, and why do we study it? Let me quote Halliday here. In the context where Halliday investigates grammar's common sense construction plane, he refers to the grammar of language. The powerhouse of a language is its grammar. Grammar is the source of energy for our semiotic encounters with each other and with our environment. And also, I do believe that in order to understand any complex aspect of the human condition, it is helpful to think about it grammatically. The boundary between the semiotic and the material worlds is by no means totally impermeable. Not totally impermeable. Okay, then what is grammar? So grammar is a making meaning resource rather than a set of rules. The idea comes from last century. That grammar is a structural concept in an ordered series comprising semantics or discourse semantic, lexicogrammar, phonology, and importantly here, it is lexicogrammar, namely the grammar and the lexis as a single continuum system. Grammar is a theory of construing human experience, enacting human rules and relations, and creating a semiotic reality in the form of a continuous flow of meaning. So the grammar that I will try to shed light on thus has those inherent properties that are listed. There are three. The property of the grammar that is to me most intriguing is that the semogenic power, the power to organize and realize meaning. The question is then, how can we illuminate such an abstract operational grammatical workings in the context of multilingual studies? One way is to compare and contrast description of language systems, not in the sense of comparative linguistics and contrasting linguistics from the last century, but again, against the background of overall systems, by making use of the system functional dimension language by which language organizes itself. Setting aside the notion of usefulness or applicability of such resources, there are an abundance of work that focuses on fragments of constituents or clauses like particle or verb in isolation. without discourse environment in which they occur. Another way is a text-based contrasting method or model, according to which David Rose in 2001 has shown tendency of theme variation in unfolding stories across a number of languages. And here, a number of us worked on system of mood, including several languages. I'll show you later on. And also, A. Steiner has presented a comparative study of cohesion between English and German yesterday at ISFC. The example that I haven't given here, although as just a pointer only, there are other studies I'm unable to list here. Another such, but perhaps more systematic and laborious, labor-intensive, is a model of cross-linguistic variations, as Elke Teich points out in the context translation studies. In this model, functionally motivated variation registers or genres are cross-linguistically examined against the background of cross-linguistic systems variation. Thus, it becomes possible to say something about variation not only at the potential pole of the cloud of instantiation, which may present similarity rather than systemic differences, but also at the mid-region between the potential and the instant pole of the cloud of instantiation, where differences, similarities can be presented as subpotentials as well as instance types. Taking both models into account, Christian Matson, Woods and John, and I have added another dimension to multilingual comparative studies, that is field values such as socio-semiotic process of reporting, expanding, and so on, and also mode values such as spoken monologue by making use of the field-based text typology, part of which Christian has already presented in his talk. In terms of phenomenal realm, or sample languages that is brought into focus, we can investigate in any realm within the architecture of language model according to the dimension system functional theory. That is, along the dimension of the cloud of instantiation and the hierarchy of stratification, and also across the ranks depending on the purpose of study. In this talk, I would take projection as a point of departure. Instead of focusing on a particular system or feature of systems or unit of language, projection is a semantic motif by which logical semantic relationships are manifested ideationally and interpersonally between a primary and secondary member element that are related interdependently. It is manifest in grouped and phrase complexes, in clauses, in clause complex, and also in text in contexts. The fact that projection is manifested sort of like omnipresently across the overall architecture of language in context, it makes the survey interesting in itself. Now, first of all, I would like to look at the projection in the overall architecture of system and functional theory, and I will move into each domain in relation to certain realization projections. In the stratified system of language, grammar is a central processing unit where meanings of different kinds are brought together as wording. As importantly, it is lexicogrammar, namely grammar and lexis. This is one example taken from Richard Dawkins. He said, Sharman guessed that the woman realized that the man believed that the woman knew he wanted her. So Sharman guessed that the woman realized that the man believed that the woman knew he wanted her. So there is a projection. Guess is the Sharman's mental processes through which this balloon has been projected. This can be analyzed system functionally in terms of experiential function, like this. The top table shows the projection contains several clauses, and highlighted blue are the mental processes. Here you have guessed, realized, believed, knew, wanted, and clause complexion. So projection, the second, the table at the bottom is the question I will raise. At the beginning, at the very beginning of the exploration of the grammar of rejection, I will make on this, Hassan points out in 1999, to describe the nature of human language, we need to place it in its social environment, that this environment, called a context, must be taken as an integral part of linguist theory. That's what system functional linguist theory is about. Then the operation that I'm engaged with is that dealing with description. Therefore, there is because of the realization between theory and description, and dealing with description will have to be taken in the context of situation, context of culture. First of all, projection in physical space. This is a fun part of for my exploration as a grammarian, walking around, trotting around the world, looking at the signs and finding something interesting. This is something that I found in Spain, which attracted my attention. Without a day, perfect. So no hunting here. I've never seen this in my life, so it was intriguing to me. So then this suggests people do actually hunting. And also what I found is the environment, the context was this. Somewhere nowhere. So you have to notice, but what this suggests is that there is some space that is actually defined by a particular sign. There is no clear boundary. Well, once you go there, there is just forest or jungle. There's no real jungle in Spain, but if it was Amazon, probably you find a jungle. There is no boundary, but you will know you're not allowed to do any hunting here. I will come back to this hunting motif later on. Another one, this is misspelling. I will have to talk to the Council of Pontevedra in Galicia, northern part of Spain. But anyway, the idea is respect the gardens. There is a sign. I'm not interested. I will use multimodal resources, but here I'm not interested in multilingual construction or meaning. Apart from, I will use the sign language as an illustrative purpose. So I was just looking at the language here. And by this sign, there is a clear space is clearly created in the middle of the Pontevedra, beautiful city in Spain. Another one this is from Sydney. He said, "Welcome to the Royal Botanic Gardens and Domain. Please walk on the grass. We also invite you to smell the roses, hug the trees, talk to the birds, and picnic on the lawns. Entry is free, blah, blah, blah. Join the friends of the gardens, become a sponsor or benefactor," and so on. If you look at analyze interpersonally, you can see exhortative command. This is join the friends of the gardens. This is actually embedding another clause, but this is highlighted as if it is an invitation, but it isn't an invitation in any way. But if you look at experientially, you will have doing, sensing, being. Here, walk, smell, hug, talk, picnic, join, and become a saying and being. And you notice this sign, you will actually see the context in which you notice this writing. This beautiful Sydney, and people lying down. And I don't know whether they're talking to the birds or hugging the trees, but that is giving us a potential in this botanic garden. Another sign that I saw was this actually come from Sydney. I don't know, is Japan. Translation. So, please use the aisles, stairs, locker rooms with socks on or bare feet. Please wear indoor shoes at the entrance of gym. Please walk to the right on the stairs. That is, please keep to the right. So this is a sign you see where. Well, in terms of interpersonal meaning, this is the only command. And honorification. Honorification is a grammatical system that enacts the tenor relationship in terms of a social hierarchy and affinity and so on. This is the enabling type, regulating. In other words, in this context, this is the kind of sign you see. So whenever you see, you have to walk to the left or right. In probably Vancouver, you're supposed to walk on the left, walk on the right. It's quite confusing in some contexts. Another example from Spain. Se necesita señora para la limpieza. So cleaning lady is needed in this context. The space here is this is a shop. This is a space. This is just, as I said, this is a fun exploring space. And since I was interested in, whenever I went overseas, I looked for these signs. Not commercial sign, not at all commercial sign, but something telling me, someone projected the text in public domain. And when I went to mainland China, traveling from Hong Kong, looking for this kind of text that I found none. Almost no existence. There are commercial ones you find, but there is none. Then this suggests that institutionally this kind of science institutionally organized and regulated. But if you go to Japan, you will see all this sign everywhere. Everywhere in the bathroom, in the toilet, and they're regulating the behavior. So there is some cultural significance of this kind of text in different societies too. Now, I'm moving down to I'm remaining at the expression plane, then I will look at projection through signifying body, expression plane that is realized by Japanese sign language. It is called Shua hand talking. There you will have subtitles. Subtitle will have Toyota car announcement to recall 23 million cars. And there is a spoken Japanese. It would say, Toyota car in America announced that they would recall 23 million cars. In Japanese, アメリカのトヨタ自動車が and so on, but you will hear this, and you will see it's about 10 seconds, less than 10 seconds of the sign language. アメリカのトヨタ自動車が230万台をリコールすると発表しました。So this is projection, recording. Then I will analyze this. Oh, one more time. Okay. So America over there. Toyota car. 23 million cars, row of cars. Recall, revive, collect, do, and so this is announcement. This is comes at the end of the projecting process. This is a verbal processes, and comes at the end. This is an aspect marker. Japanese sign language doesn't seem to operate with tense, but to operate with the aspect, completion or incompletion of process in question. And this is sign language is projected in the sign. First of all, this is the verbal process anchored in around the mouth. Whatever you do around the mouth is related to the process of sensing. And I will come back to this. Facial expression is very important in the realization of interpersonal meaning. And semiotic space is usually around this. But if I am to do a sign language in this particular context, I would probably have to use all of this. Otherwise, you won't be able to see what I can do. So maybe a whisper will be goes like this, but in public speech, we will probably expand into a further domain as a projection text. Okay, just to give you the sample. Next is a casual conversation from Aussie corpus, thanks to Diana Slade. I got this example from her PhD corpus. I'm not going to read it. There are 2 pages. I will let you read while I drink water. Okay, they highlighted, bolded, they are verbal processes. Next page. and underlying a projection. Maybe you have reached almost the end. This is just an example, just to point out the projection is a very important casual conversation. You can report what other people said, and based on which you can elaborate ongoing discussion. Then you see, on the other hand, there is another more formal speech in which projection of verbal process become very important in the history. This is an example of Australia. Okay, let the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, speak for the nation.
Today we honour the Indigenous peoples of this land, the oldest continuing cultures in human history. We reflect on their past mistreatment. We reflect in particular on the mistreatment of those who were stolen generations. This blemished chapter in our national history. The time has now come for the nation to turn a new page. A new page in Australia's history by righting the wrongs of the past and so moving forward with confidence to the future. We apologise for the laws and policies of successive parliaments and governments that have inflicted profound grief, suffering and loss on these our fellow Australians. We apologise especially for the removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families, their communities and their country. For the pain, suffering and hurt of these stolen generations, their descendants and for their families left behind, we say sorry. To the mothers and the fathers, the brothers and the sisters, for the breaking up of families and communities, we say sorry. And for the indignity and degradation thus inflicted on a proud people and a proud culture, we say sorry. We, the Parliament of Australia, respectfully request that this apology be received in the spirit in which it is offered, as part of the healing of the nation.
So here, verbal processes are very important. At the beginning, there is a move material process, but in this context, it is used as a verbal process saying apologize. It's a borderline between material and verbal, and a request saying, and so on and so forth. Then another fun text for me. This is English probably first. Robert Shaw shared his function of helping the pharmacy by calling Don Perfetto people in the shop. And as a shameless fellow member, started shouting thieves to people in a political meeting, and as a naughty stagehand of the scene, the area near the church called the Peregrina, he frequently ordered the traffic and carriage with this is a timely cause, go and stop. So this is about late 19th century. This is the context. If you see that photograph, is that the context in which this projection is occurring.
Compartía su función de reclamo y mancebo de la chica. Don Perfeuto, xente na tenta, con la de contertulio del rebozado en una reunión de políticos comenzó a gritar ladrones y tramoyista travieso de mercenarios de papel. Era frecuente que alterara el tráfico de carruajes con sus inoportunos arres y shots.
So underlines are the verbs, verbal groups, and the alphabet, the blue as a projection. There is only a verbal processes, comenzó a gritar. So then these three projections are very important in this context. This is a Pontevedra in Galicia in Spain. And just enhance this, that Lavacho is actually in the middle. Lavacho is in the middle. This is actually this parrot. It's funny, but this parrot has a very fantastic caretaker who actually taught him how to speak. He was able to utter certain at certain level, a customer in the shop and so on, or thief, or stopping, go and stop in a relevant context. And I was just amused to see this is still projections that pass on to generation, or after, 1 century. In the context, this is the statue is there, a German tourist and a tour guide looking around and hearing about this projection passed on even currently. They even into a carnival to celebrate this funny parrot. But anyway, so this is a fun part of exploring grammar in the context. Now, enter into the hard part, is nature of projection. And there is I would try not to make it as complex, but we will have to identify the grammatical organization of projection to be able to compare contrast. So in terms of semantic, projection is figured by 3 elements. 1, the projector, which is realized as the sayer or the sensor. 2, the projecting, which is the symbolized process of sensing or saying. Or 3, the projected, the content of saying or sensing that is projected. According to Halliday and Matheson, there are at least 3 systems that are involved in the differentiation of different kinds of projection in the phenomenal realm of sequence. 1 is level of projection. Oh, this is a projection. Level of projection. Either content of thinking as meaning, or content of saying as wording. Projections are sequenced to 2 figures, set up 1 figure that is projected onto a different plane of reality. It is the second order of semiotic reality, since the projected figure is projected in the form of content. So projected figure is one of sense, saying the content is externalized as an expression in wording. So therefore, it can be shared and deployed in the joint construction of meaning as an exchange. The projecting figure is one of sensing the content of thinking emerges internal to his or her consciousness. Unless exteriorized by thinking aloud or thinking to oneself, the content remains unshareable. Here, the content of saying is referred to locutions, and the content of thinking, ideas. There is another one that is interpersonal. This is the iteration of projection through the process of sensing and saying. Another is interpersonal projection, to which I will come back later on. So if we cast 2 systemic variables, one the level of projection and the mode of projection onto instance of projection in the domain of closed complexing, the metric with 4 contrast combinations of options emerge, as here it is. On the left-hand side column, so idea, project from mental process, locution, saying, and they are either quoting or reporting. This example from Michael Halliday and Matheson. Brutus thought Caesar is ambitious. So this is quoting. Brutus thought that Caesar was ambitious. Brutus said Caesar is ambitious. Brutus said that Caesar was ambitious. In terms of combinability, these options are not equally probable. As shown here, which is reproduction, a summary of the relative frequency of those options deployed in interview by Nesbitt and Gunther Plumb, which is discussed in Halliday, which were summarized in Matheson in 1995. This is a re-representation of these work. The table shows strong tendency for the 4 pairs of projections, ideas with reporting, hypertactic, and locution with quoting, paratactic. These tendencies seem to be prevalent across the languages that study in system functional terms. This frequency of occurrence in register is a very important language phenomena. I will come back to this point later on. So this paradigm further expanded. That's showing so there are proposition, exchange of information, proposal, exchange of goods and services, and on the left-hand side, reporting, and the bottom side, quoting. those differences are clearly marked in the projected clause. If it is reporting hypothetical from the top up left-hand side, he said that he had done the laundry. Or if it is questioning whether he had done the laundry, if it is quoting, it will be, he said, I have done the laundry. She says, she asked, have you done the laundry? If it's proposal, it is bound clauses, so they are not arguable. She told him to go to the laundry. She wanted him to do the laundry. And imperative, she said him do the laundry. Let's compare this, taking example from Michael Halliday, Ed MacDonald. Let's look at English first. Meanings are same, represented in Chinese too. So quoting turned into reporting. She said, I'll wait here tomorrow for you to come by. She said she'd wait there the next day for him to go. This highlight in different colors indicate the quoting shift from quoting to reporting. In Chinese, 他说我明天要在这里等你走过来。turn into 他说他第二天会在哪里等他走过去。Similar to English, there is in Chinese there is a shift in deixis, personal pronouns, demonstratives, and temporal action. Here, there is a relevant system, is the system of mood. So mood projected, a mood can be either direct mood, so direct mood is realized in the free clause. It's arguable that the clause that has been projected is, if it is quoting, it will indicate direct mood, but if it is reported, and it is projected mood. So in terms of realization, direct mood is realized by free clause, project mood by bound clause. Those two form the system of freedom. So there is a correlation between the two in terms of realization of different mood type in the environment of projection or non-projection. Same, similar matrix, but taking Chinese as an example. I will not read it, but similar to the one I show in English, I would like to just look at the realization of question in the environment of reporting and quoting. Okay, in maybe quoting first. 他问晚上回来吗？他问我晚上回不回来？ Is it correct? Ongoing. Okay, good. I'm glad it's correct. So this is a contrast. Okay, this is similar to English. In English, if it is a reporting, the binder whether is used. If it's a statement, the binder that is used to indicate the difference between quoting and reporting. But what about in Chinese? But before that, we need to look at this the system of question, realization questions as a mood type in the environment, hopefully overall meaning potential, but it's limited. This is the example of the system network. This is a unified multilingual lexicogrammatical resources. We worked on a number of people working in different languages. For example, this overall system, unified system, covers English, German, Danish, Japanese, Thai, local, Chinese, French, Spanish. We combined into overall system network, and there are options like indicative, have a declarative, interrogative, yes, no, imperative have different subtypes, suggestive, jussive, and so on. A shaded area has different meaning, but what we are going to focus on in relation to Chinese is particular area, interrogative, especially in terms of yes, no, interrogative. We will compare, contrast, unbiased type and biased type. So this is a shaded area in the overall system network, indicate this particular area is language specific. In this context, this particular system, I don't know what do you call it, is particularly specific for Chinese only. This option cannot be selected other languages that are listed here. This is blown up here. So interrogative clause have two options, whether either it is yes, no interrogative, or polar question and WH question, and so on. Once yes, no interrogative is selected, there will be another system with two options, unbiased, biased become available. This is based on Michael Halliday's work. And in terms of realization of this meaning, mood types, if it is direct mood, if it is unbiased, if it is unbiased, or if it is free clause, it can be either unbiased or biased. If it is a projected mood, then it will have to be biased. So what does it mean? What does it mean by biased and unbiased? English has and Japanese has negative question. The polar interrogative has a positive, negative. Negativeness is marked in not, and there are others too. Not in English, nai in Japanese, and hu in Chinese. And English, do you want it? Do you want it? Neutral? Don't you want it? Don't you want a positive bias? The sayers expecting positive answer is a positive bias. But of course, highly marked one will, do you want it or not? Do you want it or not? Okay. So negative, oriented towards positive bias. And Japanese is similar. 欲しいですか? Want it? 欲しくないんですか? This is positive bias. So negative indicates positive bias. In Chinese, 你要吗? 你不要吗? 你不要吗 is a negative bias. So correlation. They are similar in realizations. A negative indicate positive bias in Japanese and English, but in Chinese, to indicate negative bias. But in Chinese, again, operate with another one, 你要不要. So this is unbiased version. So for the speaker of English and Japanese, like myself, and the placement of negative in questions, because of my understanding of Japanese and English, means positive bias. So I remember when I was studying Chinese in university, Chinese language teacher used this unbiased, okay, with one negative question to me, often. So they would say, 对不对? 是不是? So because of the presence of negative, so my interpretations, will have to be positive. So I would just have to say, yes, you're correct. But later on, when I became a linguist, I realized that, this is not the case, actually. That the presence of negative have different meaning, different values, in construct inactive meaning. So the use of the negative by the language teacher was actually presented in open questions. These are unbiased questions, so that's very important. So the negative of question, we will find a similar feature in the system across languages, but the value that it holds is different because of the environment or because of the semiotic address David refers to in the overall system that is in question. Now look at Japanese. The detail doesn't matter. I would like to blow up. So this is a shaded area, verbal process in hyperactive reporting area. Then if I blow up, we would like that. On the left-hand side, locution could be, projected locution could be either statement, question, or command. And on the top row, it could be either paratactic, hypertactic, or quoting, reporting. In the environment of reported statement is shaded area. It's very ambiguous, indeterminate in Japanese. Because set aside the details, the distinction between quoting and reporting is grammaticalized through the presence of quotative particle here, for example, that indicate that whatever precedes quotative particle is actually projected locution or projected idea. So there is a clear distinction in the context in the environment question command. If it is quoting, it is kato. If it is reported, kadoka, and so on. So, but in the environment of statement, there is no clear distinction between the two. Having said that, Japanese there is a clear distinction between spoken Japanese and written Japanese, because spoken Japanese operates with a lot of final particles, limited number of close final particles such as ne, yo, ze, sa, and so on. These indicate carries different interpersonal meanings, such as being assertive, being friendly, and so on. They also indicate gender differences as well. So these interpersonal particle spoken features are present in the project clause in the environmental statement. This is very clear to distinguish whether it is quoting or reporting. Okay, now let's look at a little bit of verb. So quoting, reporting, certain verbs are specific to project a certain type of mood. So if there is you, say, state, confess, inform, explain, scold, and so on, project the declarative clause statement. These are highlighted. You, say, shikari, scold are the verbs. I will come back in a while. Interrogative, kiku, and so on. And also, like English, they are saying plus mana can be realized through different verbs. Mata, whisper, shatter, murmur, shout, and so on. But in Japanese, the verbal domain further extends toward material domains to indicate physiological process such as turn around, get up, make merry, push, stop, shrug one shoulder, can accompany projections. So although they're more like a behavioral process, but they serve as a verbal process in Japanese. Just some example. As I say, I'm not dealing with much modality, but in different of saying, sensing is realized by this balloon. So this is also the art engineer. And another one, this is the line on balloon, indicates the second one is the same plus mana. And the other one is sensing different kind of shapes. And also, since we're talking about a sign language, I'd like you to pay attention to the mouth. If the mouth is open, of course they're saying. If it's closed, there's something going in their mind. Projection in the register of news reports, some register characteristic, is that the grammatical indeterminacy that I pointed out in the mode of projections in the environmental statement gives rise to register patterns that are different from those that are characteristic of English. For example, in the English news report, tend to favor direct speech less and instead report what is said. Making use of wide variety of verbs the same, such as admit, acknowledge, claim, concede, while Japanese hard news, according to Ayako Ochi, tend to quote locution using few general verbs of saying, noberu, state, talk, kataru. And however, if you move away from hard report, then you will find other types of verb placed into service for verbal projection. Send a comment, make it clear, invite laugh, show an attitude dispute, hint at possibility, exist to support, and so on and so forth. So these are placed to serve as the process. Now we have the ground to explore a little bit further to compare contrast, and I'd like to explore Japanese speaking language family. It is usually language family, language isolate, language recurrent family that I call as the two types of Japanese. That is something you understand as Japanese as the two types, Western mainland and also Eastern mainland. Eastern mainland is where the Tokyo is. Western mainland is where the Osaka and Kyoto is, and also Ryukyu Island, where the Okinawa is. They are north and southern. Just to put it in the context, so Tokyo is north, Okinawa is now put in the center. Because Japan is very long, if you put the map, Japan on a map, usually Okinawa is displaced somewhere else. But Okinawa close to Taiwan, and Hong Kong that's where Polytechnic University where I come from. So this is Okinawa Island. It's called Nansei Island, a chain of islands in the Western Pacific. It's about 1,000 kilometers. The yellow line indicates boundary, dialectal boundary, language boundary. And within Okinawa, there is a northern Ryukyuan language, southern Ryukyuan language. They are mutually unintelligible. And I would take example of northern Ryukyuan, especially here I will be going to explore, and southern Ohama Island. There are about 600 people, 600 residents at the moment. If we say that there are 2 or 3 generations who can speak the language there will be no more than 2,000 people who are able to speak this language, so engendered language. First. When I told my mother honestly what happened, she scolded me, even though I said more hastily and confiscate the money I found in the drain. On top of that, I had to write notes saying, to those who lost money in the drain, I'm safely holding it. In the next few days, nobody turned up, so I was first scolded and got the money back. Okay, this is a recount. And first of all, this is Mena Japanese. Next. I only understand 1 or 2 words, otherwise intelligible. And next one, this is transcribed. Let's do it here. This is transcribed. This is the sound. So the question I have is this quotative particle, ndi ichi, and translation is lost there in English. So as I said, details doesn't matter. So there are 2 quotative particles. First one, ndi ichi, awateri naka yonna ndi ichi, ichoru munu, that's the verb we're saying. Then followed by ndi ichi utasatti. The question is there are 2 verbs. So there are 2 analyses possible. Reason is this. My reasoning is that towards the end, the verb will say, followed by scolded. Unlike English, those 2 verbs can project across. Those 2 verb processes can project across. So in this environment, to me, it's very redundant. So this invites analysis. First of all, one analysis is take this second ichi as a verb saying, so there will be 1, 2, 3 clauses, or take this as turned into somehow particle. Then I start looking around and looking for this example. Then I found this example. He said, I hear that living in the Yama Island is easier. He said, Satishima no Yama no kurashisan di ichi chichoibishi ga hearing. This is a mental cognitive analysis is given. I took this in the each quoting reporting. Why? Just the verb chichun has 3 senses. Okay, 3 senses. Depends on the closer environment, the particular meaning is realized. For example, if it is listen, we can't say I listen to that. Listening process cannot project. So there, this can be listened. But if the meaning is asked, it can project the clause, but the projected mood have to be questioned. But this clause is not, projected mood is not questioned. Therefore, last resort, this is here. Here is a statement in hypotaxis. So indici in this environment is serving as a quantitative particle rather than inci is realized in verbal process. So what is happening is that there is a distinction between, going back to the previous example, indi is a quoting quantitative particle, and indi which is a reporting particle. This distinction doesn't exist in Japanese, so there is a grammaticization. So grammaticization is a process by which a frequently used sequence of words or morphemes becomes automated as a single processing unit, according to John Biden. So grammaticization is word, indi, grammatical, ichi, lexical, grammaticized and turned into ichi and serving as a quantitative particle. Let's look at another example. This is Galician. Galician is a language of Western, Spanish, northern Spanish. This used to be taken as a Portuguese, together with the Portuguese. Some people think that the Portuguese and Galician are separate, or they are a sister language. But this is a sample, maybe. And it is said to be dangerous, isn't it? They are attacking everything on day. No, that is said that even during the day. I took this example given the Alken board. This is a Colombian Spanish. I turned it into, with help, I turned it into Galician. This sounds like this. So this K, this is a combination, the fear and K say plus that is the binder, is serving as a kind of reported particle. Then I asked the Galician informant if they actually use it, and they actually do use it often. Then I asked a friend in Portugal, Europe, Portugal, if they use it, and they say they do. Now, it is K at their deal. I don't know whether it is used in Brazilian Portuguese, but I don't know. And compare contrast, this is actually, this que is used in Galician and Spanish. Galician, this que alguien perdió la cartera. Spanish, dicen que alguien perdió la cartera. And also talk about weather, this que mañana va a llover, or Spanish, dicen que mañana va a llover. Then my question is, for which I don't have answer, is how do you actually analyze this? How do you analyze this case? In this context of Galician, probably it is more turned into grammatized as a particle, quantitative particle. What about it is so in Spanish? And if it is so, how would you analyze this interpersonally? Is this an interpersonal particle, shortly at the beginning of the clause, or is it part of a negotiator? Really love it suggests. That question, I just leave it to the expert. Now then, going back to the gray area, I said this is the indeterminate area, and how do you actually analyze, realize the distinction between quoted statement, reported statement in the context of Japanese. In Japanese, operates with, you make use of another system, that's the interpersonal projection, evidentiality. So evidentiality is enactment of his or her degree of commitment to the proposition, evidential assessment or level of reliability of proposition in a relevant context. So there is a mida, there is a proposition. One way is to base on hearsay, you mark hearsay, or mark on sensory evidence, visual evidence, auditory evidence, maybe tactile sensation, presented as evidence, but it is still second-hand, or based on cause and effect relationship, depends on generalization, based on inference and so on. Based on this, Japanese realize organized interpersonal clause as shown at the top. So interpersonal clause organization subject is a predicator. Predicator is more like a combination of finite predicate in English. That is where evidence is presented. On the bottom part, this is some example. This is a soda. Seems to be And in terms of systemic organization, we can present it in the system network. This is evidentiality optional system. It can be marked or unmarked. It always goes with declarative. You cannot mark evidentiality if the clause is a question. Let's look at the source hearsay. And I'd like to show you the environment in which this evidentiality is very often used.
おじいさんとおばあさんが仲良く暮らしていたそうだ。ところがこの二人に近頃気がかりなことが一つあった。
So this is a narrative. As Patan Papon studied in the context of minority language in Thai, in the case of Japanese, that's where the evidentiality comes at the beginning of the clause, where the scene is set for the rest of the story, a placement of characters, identification locations, and take place and so on. I don't know if evidentiality is marked in Thai languages. I said I will come back to sign language. So this is a weather forecast, how the weather forecast is realized in sign language. The meaning is the Pacific coast will be largely fine and dry conditions are likely to continue. It goes like that. One more time. Okay, then I will decompose it. I'd like to pay attention to the facial expression. That's where the interpersonal meaning is realized. Large, water salt, wave, wide, sunny, close boundary, air, thing, condition, appearance, continue. This is a mental process projection, anchored in the head. So it is usually the image, anchored in the head. So how is this realized in Japanese? Japanese, of course, realized it is with evidential. So at the end of the clause, where the predicate is realized, this is a part of the clause. It said, 空気の乾燥した状態が続きそうです. The same example we found in the narrative, folktale, is realized here, but in sign language. So projected proposition, Pacific coast largely fine, dry condition continue. So ideation of projection marked at the end, a projection. So why is that? So in Japanese, this inference or appearance is marked realized through evidentiality, but in sign language is that maybe the key is that whether or not the process is externalized. So if in Japanese, the mental process is internalized unless you say it, you cannot externalize, but all the sign language is externalized in any case, otherwise there is no way of communicating. Now, let's look at evidentiality very quickly. This is a system that is proposed by Eichenwald in 2004, as you summarize it, tabulated, and because her interest is typologized evidentialities, so what she has come up with the 4 types. Types is related to, 2, 3, 4, 5 types. What it means is that each evidentiality system has 2 options, 2 choices, or 3 choices, 4 choices, or 5 choices. She studied about 400 languages or so, if I remember it correctly. And that if there are 2 choices, first hand, non-first hand, everything else reported, everything else, sensory evidence reported. It's very hard. I couldn't follow this very well, but very significant, very important. So I decided to systematize it. So if you systematize it, so evidentiality have 2 options. Either it is a first hand or non-first hand. It is first hand, most important is visual information, most reliable. If it is not visual, it is either auditory or sensory. If it is not first hand, it could be based on cognition, understanding, inference, or assumption, or hearsay and quotation. And Japanese can be slotted in. And we need more languages to test this system. And There's the boundary here. The one is sensing. The sensing is very important to derive evidence. And also sensing. There is a blue line, but my understanding is that the last one, quotation, is ideation projection. The rest is interpersonal projection. The one example. Sharing experience construction evidence. This is based on Nicholas Evans, published in 2010. Just, he gave the 5 examples from the language matters, the Panoan languages in the Amazon in a border between Brazilian and Peruvian. There seems to be my interpretation. This is my interpretation. There seems to be 2 timelines. So you go and find a peccary, is more like a pig-like wild animal, is a trace. This trace is found in the jungle, and the hunter goes back home and talk about this track that he found, so that later on he will be able to go back and find it properly. So there's a recently created track. So perceived a very long time ago, found it, the marking Denek, and next, differently realized, this track could be very old. This is quite complex, and if you say, well, we can realize this in English, we can say this old track was found a long time ago. A new track was found recently. It doesn't really matter, but the important thing is that all of this complexity is realized through only one verbal group. So complexity is there. And why this complex construction of evidence is important, because they will have to go and hunting. Without this reporting shared experience, it becomes impossible to go and hunting. Okay. I will maybe 5 minutes or so, then I finish. Then, why is that? Why do we have evidentiality? Why evidentiality system is very interesting, because it's the area of features. It's not particularly related to particular language families, but area of features. You find in certain area, you don't find in certain area. So the question is why? Why the evidentiality has been created? What's the purpose that serves for certain people living in a different region? So it's a holiday. I was struck by a number of features of the child's emergence into meaning and of early symmetric encounters, which seemed highly significant for the way language had evolved. I won't be able to go through detail, just to point. So this is the ontological development in phase 2. In phase 2, dialogue emerged, and at this stage, child is able to describe, annotate, but they are still unable to construct information until when grammar is struggling in the context. Then telling becomes possible. Telling means the development of the concept of imparting information. Meaning has become a way of sharing experience, shared experience in a speech fellowship, instead of just the way construct experience that has been or being shared. So this is the ontological development, and then the phylogenetic development Christian has proposed goes like that. Again, no detail. Okay. So important is immersion of narrative discourse that has been marked by evidence, and also shared personal experience that has been realized in this Amazonian language. Shared knowledge has to be, or shared experience has to be constructed in such a way that is meaningful. Meaningful in order to survive and prosper in certain eco-social environment. If we are living in a jungle, this kind of information is very critical. Okay, then if you have traveled all the way from different parts of the world, you know how long it took, 10 hours, 12 hours, and so on. But we have migrated all the way from out of Africa. It took many, many years to reach area first started, the last one. Okay, they compare this with the advent of agriculture, food construction. So there are a few places, Southwest Asia, China, Mesoamerica, East US, Amazonia, Andes, and so on. The green arrow, that's what Jerry Diamond said, they are ultimate factor in the causation of food productions. So green arrow indicates that the food production passes on the knowledge and also actually sees, and in order to cultivate in a given environment has been very easy. So it very spread very quickly. So therefore, farmers taking over hunters, hunter-gatherers had to adopt this farming and agriculture in order to survive and prosper. They're able to bear more children and so on. Then you compare this, but in Africa, it didn't happen. As Christian pointed out, Bantu people with knowledge and technology of agriculture actually went down to south, and the Khoisan people and people are pushed down to south of Africa in the corner. If you compare this with evidentiality based on Ferdinand, based on 418 languages. So you have to see area features. As I say, area features. You don't find many evidential markers in Europe, in Asia, not very much in Africa, but in South America and North America abundant. That's where human ancestor Homo grammaticus reached later than Africa and any other part, and we are in South and North America. At the beginning of this conference, Elder Larry Grant talked about oral history. Oral history should be represented as it is with written. Written record becomes a fact. But if you look at the evidentiality and so on, in even oral history, there is the grammatical system which enables us to distinguish the validity of the proposition that is put forward. By marking or not marking, we are able to distinguish fact that is useful to survive and live in eco-social environment, but those are not hearsay, and also that it has been turned into traditions. Then I hope, I'm going to end now, my talk was not, I hope encourage some people, or if you know someone who has enough knowledge to work on languages in both regions, North and South American region, to work on these languages, to identify the grammar working, to make fun, to have a good time working with them before it's too late, before it dies away, and we are no longer access to this treasury of language system. Thank you.